Hey guys, welcome to Serious Laughs. This is episode 18. What does it mean to level up in life? Leveling up in the Earth School.
What are the signs you've leveled up in life? And what the heck does that even mean?
Hey guys, I'm Molly and I'm a native Minnesotan.
Hi guys, I'm Sheri and I am a native New Yorker.
And we have Brenda Grate. You want to tell us something about yourself, Brenda?
Brenda. I'm a native Californian.
Ooh. Dean, we're recording now.
I was
and
born in
those-
Santa Rosa.
Oh man. As we're recording this is the 10th of January. All the fires are broken out in California. Just awful.
Yeah.
Awful news.
It is.
So
I actually have
just
family in
horrible.
Riverside, not too far from there.
No.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, guys, we have Brenda Grate back again. She was on the 4th episode. Now she's back for the 18th episode. Sheri, why don't you take it away and give a quick little blip about her again? We love Brenda.
Oh, our guests have been our guests. I need more sleep. Our listeners have been asking for you. Brenda Grate is great. She is the founder of Mugwort Meadow. It's a holistic apothecary, and she is offering a great deal right now. It's a $50 value where you can get a free consultation with Brenda Grate, who is an herbalist, a health coach, and a prolific author with a lot of wisdom, which is a great deal of why we want her to be with us again and again, why you keep asking for her. So she's here, and we could not be more grateful to have you on today's show.
Well, my name works for you.
Well, you are great. Brenda Grate.
Brenda Grate's great.
Brenda Grate's great.
Nice.
And you can find her on Mugwort Meadow on TikTok, on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. Did I leave anything out? Well,
The woman is everywhere.
Substack.
Yeah.
Substack as well. Mugwort and Meadow.
Substack.
Yes.
Substack. And you can.
I've actually
Yep.
got two different accounts. I've got my Mugwort and Meadow, and then I have Great Rights, spelled like my last name, Great. And that's where I'm actually putting out serial chapters of my novels. So I have a new young adult novel that I have the first chapter out, and I will soon be putting up the next chapter. And I'll put out every chapter until it is complete. And then whoever subscribes to the account actually will get a copy of the ebook once it's complete.
And
Sweet.
it's a well-written, haunting young adult novel. So
Yes.
if you like the
The
fantasy,
Invisible Girl.
coming of age,
Yeah.
The Invisible Girl, and it's
Yes.
even though she's great, it's Grate. We want you to find her.
We do.
So Brenda and
Okay.
I were talking, despite
Mhm.
the slight physical difference. She's in Greece, and we are in Houston, Texas. So it's kind of a long bike ride. And we were talking about this idea of leveling up. And we often think about leveling up as gaming, this idea of moving up, whether it was Pac-Man when we were all growing up, or, Mario Brothers, you get those gamification, you feel good. We even get it on Instagram, right? Like how many followers, how many likes, we get
Mhm.
addicted to it.
Yeah.
But leveling up can be applied to this Earth School that we're living in. How do you, Brenda Grate, define leveling up?
Well, I said it when we were having our conversation because it's something that I guess I've recently discovered personally, because we've made some big changes in our lives coming to Greece. It's not easy to upend your life, basically sell everything and move to a new country, which is what we did. And for me, I had this realization. It was in the summer. We were going through some difficult times, and thankfully things are much better now. We were going through some difficult times, and I actually had a moment of kind of, I guess, almost like, when you step back and you look at yourself and go, what the hell's going on? Because I should have been scared considering the circumstances, but I wasn't. I was full of joy and I was full of gratitude. And I was like, everything's going to be fine. And I had this absolute moment of clarity of that feeling of, like you say in a video game where you level up. I felt like I'd reached a new level. And I think the key about leveling up is not so much about, oh, hey, I did it. I reached a new level. Yay, me. It's actually very humbling. It's actually very like, I don't know, it makes you feel, wow, this is a great place to be, but you understand things so much better. You understand, where the joy truly is. And I guess that's what's humbling. It's not, wow, we've made this success. It's because it's not about that. It's about where you are right here. It's about where you are with your partner. It's about how you actually see the world. And it's very hard to describe because it's something that you kind of have to experience. But when you do, yeah, it's this joy despite the circumstances, this feeling of, yeah, like everything could implode in my face at any moment, but I know I'll be fine. And I think that's kind of, for me, that's where it really is. It's that, I think we talked about it before, or maybe you and I talked about it, Sheri, because we talk about a lot of stuff, but we talked about that whole idea of surrendering. And I honestly think that that's where the level up comes in, is when you finally say, I give up. I admit I have no control. It's going to happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I give up. But yet giving up doesn't mean quitting. It actually, surprisingly, like so many truths in life that are a conundrum, it actually means you surge forward, which you wouldn't expect. You think you take your hands off the wheel, that your boat or your car is going to crash, when in fact, all of a sudden you've got a lot of power behind it. And I guess that would be, for me, leveling up.
What a beautiful answer. When we surrender,
that was great.
You're surging forward. That's beautiful.
Yeah, surrender is not giving up.
That moment, things have, like, I was struggling because part of the whole thing behind us coming here and I really wanted to make a career of my writing. It was something I've been struggling with for pretty much my entire life. I've written 3 books, but it was like pulling teeth. And then, coming here, it was like, okay, this is kind of my do or die. Either I'm going to make it or I'm not. And I need to test myself. Well, I got tested this year like never before. And, it was like, in that moment when I was struggling, I still wasn't there yet. And after I surrendered, that's when my career as a ghostwriter, as a herbalist, all of the things that I was putting my efforts into, they started just taking off. And I kind of thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think it was supposed to happen that way. I thought we were supposed to be the ones making things happen, Funny enough, it's not really that way.
Right. Well, this reminds me of Sheri, is, when you hear actors tell stories about their auditioning and they want the role so badly and they just work so hard, And then you hear the actors say, well, the ones where they're like, I just went in there and I just let everything go out the window and I just did it. And then they booked the role. It's because they've just like surrendered to, whatever it is. You've just said it's going to happen or it's not. I'm at least going to fucking have fun in that audition room, because they can be really
and maybe that's why they succeeded, right?
There you go.
They let the reality, the true person, rather than trying to control the situation by maybe being what they thought they wanted, they were just themselves, right? It's I think maybe that's a little bit of it for me as well. I stopped pushing it so hard and allowed the work that I wanted to come to me. I actually just finished writing a book on kidney disease, which was fantastic because it was right up my alley with the herbalism. And then I just got booked to do a book on menopause. So I'm going, this is the kind of stuff I want to write.
That's weird.
No, it's
Our
not.
eyes-
It's not. But Molly, explain why we're having this
Well,
moment.
okay.
Oh, no,
Our
really?
eyes, both of our eyes just popped out of our
I
heads.
saw that.
When she's okay. For people listening, Sheri and our eyeballs just popped out of our heads when she talked about the menopause book. Well, because I was emotional last night because I'm on my period. Sheri is in menopause. She's
No,
had
no. I'm
no, she's
post.
gone through it. She's past
I'm
it. She's past
done.
it. She's
Yeah.
There
done.
are cobwebs
I'm in the middle of it.
inside. It's a
Okay, okay.
goat stew in the gynecological area, and I'm fine with that.
Exactly.
like
So
me.
she's post. I'm
Pre.
Brenda just said she's going through pre.
Yeah.
And I'll go through it here any year. But we just said we need to have
an estrogen law firm here.
We
Sorry,
need
I
that.
got excited
Well, no.
because, like
well, we were just saying we need to have a show about menopause.
Well, that's perfect.
And
That's
there you
perfect.
go.
Yeah. Well, and it's
all
a
the
topic, because the problem is there's not enough talking about it. There's not enough information on how to go through it naturally without having to, do drugs that raise your risk of breast cancer and, all of these different things, or suffer through it, which is what women, come on, we all suffer, right? It's like, oh, being a woman means we have to suffer. Bullshit. I disagree, because I got my little magic bottle of tincture. I call it my happy juice. And my husband will say, have you been taking your tincture lately? In a very sweet way.
Oh, Molly, we have
Because
to
he
do
sees
a
it.
commercial of these tinctures.
We do.
Yeah.
I just like the word
Happy juice.
Tincture. Happy juice. Did you take
tincture.
your
Sounds like
tincture?
sphincter. The sphincter tincture. God.
But
Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
it
Okay.
happened because of this surrendering, this whole eye-popping menopausal epiphany. It's this idea of, we were playful about it before the show. We're playful about it now. We're open.
Yeah.
And the connections start happening. We're not saying, what is our next show topic going to be about? Like Molly and I have never had to do that, because it happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
I agree.
like that.
Okay. I love this. So I really, really love your answer in terms of what leveling up is. And it's an understanding, it's a surrender, and it's not giving up. There's a clear distinction there. So we have a quote from you. It says, when you can find joy in the midst of the scariest times, you've leveled up. You just mentioned that. So when did you experience a leveling up based on this quote?
It was that this summer. Yeah.
It was okay.
And
It was this summer.
I remember thinking it was a really rough day. My husband, he had been working, and all of a sudden the work dried up and he didn't have anything to keep him busy, which, he's a hands-on guy. He needs to be busy. And he was going through it. He was struggling with, like how his emotions, how he was feeling about it, and I was feeling for him, and, as we do. And it was like just this feeling of, okay, well, what's going to happen is going to happen. And I remember we were laying in our big bed. We had our 2 cats laying on the bed with us there. And I remember thinking to myself, everything, because of course my kids are back in Canada, and, the people that I love are everywhere. But the people in my immediate family that I love, that I feel safe with, that I feel comfortable with, and of course that includes my 2 stupid cats. I was thinking to myself, everything that I really love is in this bed right now. And I'm happy. And I'm happy, and I'm content. And contentment is something that we forget about, or maybe don't even realize how precious it is to have those feelings of contentment. I had no idea what was going to happen the next day. I didn't know where we would be. And at the time we were on a Greek island, and now we're in Sparta. I had no idea where we were going to go and, where Chad was going to work and what would happen. And, you know, even in our life before we came here, that happens all the time. You know, you just don't know what's coming. But you can take those moments, those little moments where you stop and say, well, we're all okay right now.
Mhm.
And we're having a good day. We're happy. You know, maybe we're watching a movie together, or maybe we went for a really nice walk and we laughed. Those are good moments, you
Mhm.
know, and savoring them, not just, you know, we have all these memes and, you know, don't forget to smell the roses and blah, blah, blah. No, like really stop and say, everything I love is in this bed right now. I'm good.
Mm.
You know, I think those moments are what remind us of why we're doing what we're doing. Why are we here? Right? It's not for the job and the promotions and the, you know, like it's wonderful to have goals, but goals should never supersede those moments. Goals should be what we're doing, why we're, you know, kind of out there working hard, but this is why we're doing it, is for those moments.
That's beautiful. It's soaking in that appreciation.
Yeah, being
And
grateful. Right?
that's, yeah.
And
and
I
it
believe
feeds on
gratitude brings more good things, right?
We just, oh my
Mhm.
God, we just said the same thing. Yeah. It feeds on itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I know I have a question for you. Unless Molly, did you want to ask something?
No, it just made me
Okay.
start thinking about, you know, things that I'm grateful for. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
awesome.
Yeah. You're helping everyone right now. All of us.
Well, those things helped me.
It's, you know, and you're right when you say, oh, they have these cliches, but they're cliches for a reason. But we
Exactly.
have to embody it. And
Yes.
you giving us
Yeah.
that, like, I can see the bed. I can see you with your cats. And in the face of all this uncertainty, you have leveled up because
Mhm.
it's the journey. It's the journey. It's the journey. You're
Yeah,
never going to get there
it is.
anyway because there'll be
No.
something
And
else.
what is there anyway?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Right.
Honestly, there is the end.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And I don't want to get there too quick.
I don't
I
want to
want
get
to
there.
I want to enjoy my time. I want to
Mhm.
do lots of fun things and experience things, right? So yeah, the journey is the most important.
I love
So if you're not
that.
enjoying the journey, then ouch.
Yeah.
And I think this gets to the next question Molly and I have for you. You know, since like the cusp of 2024, 2025, now this new year, I have been hearing a lot of talk about the institutions that we thought were so solid, finding
Yeah.
tons of holes in them, from education to healthcare to government. January 6th, right? Everyone
Yeah.
was holding their breath. Is there going to be another
Yeah.
usurpation, disruption, chaos, violence? So we're seeing, we had the United Healthcare CEO murdered
Yes.
in cold blood. And it was almost like this Robin Hood-esque perverted justice. And, when I don't want to put ideas in your mouth, but I actually just want to put it out there for you because you're so
Yeah.
insightful. So can you explain the potential relationship, if there is one, between this idea of leveling up in the face of uncertainty, in the face of pain,
Yeah.
between this idea of leveling up and everything that is happening within the structures that we thought were so solid, like I have my 401k, I have my retirement, I will stay in my cubicle. We're even seeing shows that reflect this rebellion against it, like Severance on Apple, where we actually separate our two selves, what we really feel and what we show to the world. So, so that's my question. Did I even ask a question? Was there a question?
Yeah.
Did I make it a Tootsie Roll Pop?
I think
You
so.
have to now look and bitch, what did you just do to me? Now I gotta unwrap this and I didn't have a headache when I started, but now I have one. Thank you very much.
Well, I have one sentence to answer that, and then I'll explain. My answer to that is there's no such thing as security. And that's the lie we've been fed. Just do this and you will feel safe. Sorry, there's no such thing as safety. Doesn't work that way. And the more we cling to that, the more unsafe we feel. Right? It's
Oh my God. I just need, like, I don't know about you, Molly. That resonated with me.
Yeah.
You're like chasing our tail like a dog.
Yeah. You gotta have your savings. You gotta have your insurance. Well, then what? The insurance gets canceled and a wildfire comes through and burns down everybody's houses. Like, yeah, there's no such thing. It doesn't matter who you are, what your circumstances are in life. There's no such thing as security. So that was the beginning of my revelation. And then after that, it was like, well, if that's the case, well, then I might as well surrender because I have no control anyway. Right. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've come through in the last few years and part of what led to us coming to Greece was the fact of us realizing that we were going to be chasing our tails until we either died or, retired and probably never could afford to retire, or we go and we try something else, and lucky for us, I had already done this for a while, previously. So I had an idea of what it would be like to live over here. But it just, the bottom line is society is kind of falling apart in a lot of ways, and a lot of people are getting very disillusioned and saying like, what the hell? You sold me a bill of goods. I believed you. Yeah. And now I feel screwed over. Right. A lot of people are feeling like that and they're feeling very angry. Chad and I both went through that for a little time. We were angry. We're from Canada. You can just imagine how the Canadians are feeling. Our prime minister just resigned. Resigned. We'll leave it at that. Because there's a lot of bullshit going on behind that and a lot of machinations because, it's politics. And, we're watching. I just had a conversation with my daughter just a few days ago, and I was telling her, I was laughing about, because when we first came here, we were surprised at, the cost of groceries had gone up since I was here before, that's relative. And then we went to the island and it was even more expensive. And then we came here and I said to her, I was like, oh, it's fantastic because it's just like it was when I was here before. I go to the little grocery store and I spend 20 euros and I get bags of groceries. She's like, Mom, don't talk to me about bags of groceries for 20 euros. She lives in Ontario, Canada. I was like, oops, sorry. But, the prices are going up like crazy. Yes, Canadians have free healthcare, but the quality of care is atrocious. And I mean, it's like we keep on spouting these things saying, oh yeah, well, we have this and oh, we have that. And, I have insurance but do we really, people are getting disillusioned and that's always the beginning of a revolution. Revelations lead to revolutions. Right. So,
oh yeah.
I think that's a lot of what I see happening is people saying, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. And I'm really proud of the people who are making those decisions. It's not easy to say whether it's, you're going to go and homestead or whatever, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of basically step out of the system and say, I'm going to live my life on my terms. It doesn't have to be to that extreme, but there's a lot of people who are choosing that. And I don't think it's entirely because they're disillusioned with the system. I think a lot of people are really being drawn back to our nature as people, living close to the land, because we're so stressed out and sick because we've lost our connection. And I think that's a big part of it. I find even if I spend too many days in a row in the house, I start to feel that way. And I live a very stress-free life overall. But the minute I get outside and I'm in nature, everything feels right again. So there is something to that, So I think it's, that's my short answer, but that's also my long answer.
Beautiful.
Well, it was a good answer. It was a good answer.
Molly, you had a question for Brenda. And I think your business, speaking of which, is going to soar because you're offering a new way to those who are waking up.
It's true, Sheri, but the other side of it, and this is something that I face a lot and I've had to come to terms with, is people have to want to change their lives too. Because right from the time I was a very young child, I've always been a giver. I've always been somebody who loves to help people. Not surprising that I do what I do. But I used to get so frustrated and like, why won't they let me help them? Like I know, this can help and that can help. And I've had to learn to step back on that, because the bottom line is you have to want to get better. And that means a commitment, right? Everybody, like we have been sold a bill of goods as far as the pharmaceutical industry for sure, right? It's caused us to go, because I was talking to a potential client maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And he was so frustrated and fed up that he couldn't sleep, that he was offering $10,000 to somebody who could give him an answer that would work. And I wrote him, I saw this on Upwork actually. And so I wrote him and I said, okay, first off, I'm not offering you an answer that you're going to give me $10,000. I know, because I know it doesn't exist. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I know it doesn't exist. But if you are open to making changes and you're open to exploring to figure out what the root of the issue is, then yes, I think I could help you. Right. So I ended up having a consult with him, and we basically got down to, and I had my suspicions just, reading his little message. And we got down to one of the things that I suspected was overthinking. He's like, oh, my wife wanted me to pick up a cake in the morning and I couldn't sleep because all I could think about was, what if my alarm doesn't go off? And what if I don't get there in time? And, and I thought to myself, there's your root right there. That's it right there. And that's not going to be fixed with the pill. Not even a herb can fix that, right? That's going to take
Those are called Band-Aids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, that's a really big part of it, is we're so conditioned to deal with symptoms that we never, ever, we don't get the idea that, we got to focus on the root and find the root of the problem, but that means time. It means effort. And we're so exhausted by our lives that the thought of adding even one more thing, it's like, no, just give me a pill. Right. Yeah. That right there is what I deal with the most in building my business is, having people who are willing to say, yes, I'm willing to commit to this. I want to better my life. I want to be healthy. It's sad, but I absolutely understand it too.
Oh no. And so much of that is just what we put in our bodies, and the food that we're eating. We've got my youngest son has acid reflux. And so he is on medication for it. But more than that, he's very energetic. I hate to even use the term ADD or ADHD. And his teacher brought it up at one point and kind of hinted at like maybe taking him to the doctors. And I was like, I'm not putting it on my medication. So we have started, because it's hard for him to eat, we're like, we'll just give him the food he will eat, which isn't good food. So it's like, we're in this process right now of what is going to be the best food for him to calm his body and like all the things. He's 6, 7. He's got energy to burn. I get it. I'm not telling him he's got to sit like in comatose. He's 7. But definitely there's there's research that we have to start doing as parents
yeah,
to
for sure.
make sure he gets what he needs.
Yeah,
And it is.
it's a challenge. It's such a
It is.
challenge. Yeah.
It is,
And
but
the food supply is so adulterated with,
yes.
even if you think you're making good choices, it's still difficult. And then if you want to eat pure organic, if it even is organic, I can't even tell you how many tomatoes we have been eating ever since we came to Greece, only because Chad, for the first time in his life, likes tomatoes.
Yes,
because
they're great.
Now he knows what they actually taste like.
Oh, sure.
I laugh, but do you know how sad that is? That's sad. And
really
we ate
is.
organic in Canada. We even grew our own, and those were delicious. But like, he's absolutely blown away at the taste of the tomatoes, and that's just one thing. It's sad. We're not just victims of the political and the the pharmaceutical companies and blah blah blah. Our food system is absolutely fucked, and that's the only word for it.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. We're also, there's the politics of food marketing.
Oh yeah.
And
that's
this is organic, and is it really organic?
Yeah.
It's a whole other.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you're helping wake people up to that, which is a leveling up.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what I try to help people with, is not just, this is what herbs you take or medicine or whatever, but it really starts with the food that you're eating and what's good for your body, and, and trying to, eat.
I have to make an appointment with you. I've been I have been making myself such a low priority, which is in itself part of the root of the problem. I'm like, well, I first have to do this, and I first have to, and there's a joke about like so and so dies and gets to the kingdom of whatever, and God says, you didn't, the person, man or woman, I don't know, I'm horrible at these cliche jokes, but they say, the person says, I didn't have time. I didn't have time to exercise. I didn't. And well, now you have all the time in the world.
Exactly.
There's my joke.
Didn't.
Okay, so we talk about menopause. We'll talk some more about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be great. Okay, so we've kind of. Okay, let's talk about leveling up on a spiritual level.
Okay.
So are there particular signs or hallmark traits to look for? Yeah, let's just start there. Spiritually leveling up. What does that look like? What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a big question. For my personal journey, and now it's spiritually, that's been quite a journey. I probably, maybe I told you guys back, I think when we had our first podcast, that my first marriage, I was actually a pastor's wife for 20 years. And so I was in the church.
I'm so glad it's not me. Molly and I are looking at each other like, I'm like, did Alzheimer's?
I don't think we got that bit of information. Okay.
No, I'm so glad. You're my reality check. I'm like, wait,
let's go.
So yeah, my kid's father was a pastor, youth pastor.
You were married. You were a pastor's wife for 20 years.
Yeah, for a while we actually had our own church for I think 2 or 3 years, something like that. Yeah.
So you were not a pagan.
No, I was not then.
Just making sure.
Well, yes, I actually was. I just
you were a closet pagan, or were you a pagan that you weren't even aware you were being a pagan?
I had so many questions and so many things that I just disagreed with and struggled with. But, when you're in it, and there were parts of it that I loved, the helping people part of it was wonderful, and I did do a lot of that. I was a homeschooling mom as well. I homeschooled my kids for 8 years. And so I also helped many other moms with their homeschooling journeys because I was a part of a big homeschooling group, and some of them were struggling and I was figuring it out as I went along too, but I've always had a natural gift for teaching. So for me, I was in my glory. I loved it. And so I would go and help them with, because I did unit studies was the way that I did it. And it just worked fantastic, give the kids a topic and, and they would just get right into it. And so I helped other moms with that. And when my relationship began to kind of, well, that's a whole other story. Anyway, we'll get to the spiritual part of it. When I split up with him, I had kind of walked away from the church, I would say probably at least 5 years before the end of the marriage. And we were now, living in a town. He was working at a hospital as an engineer. So, we weren't actually part of the church per se anymore. We were still attending. But I was just, I'd had enough. Man, the church had failed me, especially because when there were really rough things going on in my marriage, I reached out for help, and they basically told me that, I had to figure it out. And, it was pretty bad. And so then I went for a while kind of going, well, what do I believe? What is out there? And it was kind of a rough time, but I started to kind of come right back around to what I'd always believed, which was really interesting, and that's what led me to, to being close to nature, because I've always kind of looked at nature as my example. And I've always thought of people. I mean, we're part of nature. We're another one of those animals. So whenever I'm looking at, well, why do people act like this? Why do they act like that? Well, then I would look at animals and say, well, there's instinct. Sometimes the reason we do things is instinctual, and some, we try so hard to rise above it, but there's a lot of things that we do that, we're geared to do. That's just part of who we are as a species, And so that's what sort of, as I started exploring that more and more, I was led right into paganism. And that's where I felt the most comfortable. It felt the most natural. And so for me, it's just being as close to nature as possible, observing the seasons. And observing the seasons also means observing the seasons in myself as well. I'm in my crone years now, which I'm loving it. I think it's fantastic.
I do too.
I actually wrote
that on the menopause.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that, about, just how being, being the maid and then the mother, I was so consumed with everybody else. But being the crone now, I can take a step back and go, okay, yeah, I'm starting to understand some of this stuff here, and maybe I have some wisdom to share. But it's, when you say leveling up spiritually, I guess it's maybe just going through the phases and getting greater understanding, maybe, the understanding of the surrendering, that was a huge step forward for me. And so I would probably say that part of it, when we talk about, how did I level up, it was leveling up spiritually as well, in surrendering and feeling like, it's so hard to put into words, and I don't usually struggle with that, but it's such a powerful moment when you go through that it is really hard to put into words. It feels very wordless. It's more emotion. And I think that's a big part of the understanding too, is embracing my emotions rather than fighting them, because I have fought them tooth and nail my entire life. I grew up in a family where if I, showed any kind of emotion on my face, it would get slapped off. I was not allowed autonomy. I was not allowed to own my own feelings. I was just a reflection. That was it. So for me, emotion was dangerous. Emotion was not to be trusted, So it's been a journey of even learning to embrace the emotion and understanding that it's actually where the power lies, is in the emotion, right? So that was a big revelation. So leveling up spiritually was definitely discovering that emotion is where your power lies. And so embracing it doesn't mean letting it go wild and, like you have to have moments like that for sure. But that's not what it means. It actually means being still with it, being okay with it, sitting with the emotion, feeling it, and not judging it, accepting it, and then moving on.
Not anesthetizing it the way particularly American culture does, anesthetizing it with alcohol, with addictive shopping, addictive gambling, addictive
Yes, exactly.
drinking, eating, because God forbid you sit with the discomfort.
Exactly.
Because it will pass. It passes. It always passes.
It does.
Nobody wants to go through. Not no one, but you don't want to go through.
Well, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be uncomfortable, right? I mean, North American life really is about being as comfortable as possible. Right. And I tell you, coming to Europe sure changed my thinking on that. I said to my husband not too long ago, I did not realize what a wuss I was until I came here. The beds like in Italy and Greece, like they are the most uncomfortable. No matter where I go, the bed is uncomfortable compared to what I'm used to in Canada, stuff like that. Wow. But the comfort actually that we experience here is in absolutely different things. It's not physical comfort in the sense of, super plush furniture and comfy beds and all that. The comfort actually lies in the peace, in the enjoyment of, sitting down with a bunch of people and having food and just laughing and enjoying yourself, where you can just be yourself. As a woman, I've never felt less judged than in Europe. As soon as I would go back to Canada, I would instantly get this uncomfortable feeling and go, oh my God, I feel judged again. Like people are looking at me and judging me on what I look like and have I gained 5 pounds or, like it's just this feeling. And it might have been in my head, but I tell you, I come to Europe and I don't feel it anymore. And as soon as I go back, I feel it again. And it might just be my perception of my culture, but I definitely would feel that. Whereas here, I feel like I can just be me. And I'm a little bit eccentric. I'm a little bit different from most people that I know. And here, I'm okay with it. I struggled with that in Canada a lot more than I do here. Now that I'm a crone, I'm kind of like, what the fuck? I don't care. But,
Well, that was just a great commercial for Europe. I feel like you've just sold me. I want to fucking leave right now. Sounds amazing.
Everywhere you go, that's one thing I've learned through travel is, there is no utopia. I mean, as much as we wish it. But, when we were talking earlier before we started filming, we talked about, how North Americans don't, they understand entertainment. We're talking about that eat, pray, love. I found the quote.
Oh, yay. Let's hear it.
Americans know entertainment, but they don't know pleasure. That's the quote from Eat, Pray, Love. And it was Luca Spaghetti who said that.
Oh, that's amazing. Now I want spaghetti.
Because you cannot experience true pleasure if you have guilt.
Oh, yeah, you were just saying that. We were talking about a nap or something, or resting.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I fall into that, and so many people do. Where it's like if I need a break, boy, oh boy, does the guilt just run through my body?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so dumb.
From? Like I've been here for over a year now, and I still struggle with that. I still have that little bit, and this week I was like, you know what? I'm taking this week off. I need that break so that my mind is fresh when I start writing the next book, and I'm just not going to feel guilty. And I have almost knit an entire sweater this week, and it has been so much fun just to relax, spend time with my husband, pet the kitties, go for walks, and knit, something that I absolutely love doing and gives me, it's that, I don't know, the repetitive movement. There's something about that. I was actually writing about that in one of my books and how it's so calming to the nervous system. But, it's a little bit of it is my hands can't be still. So I admit that. So it does help me.
But you're letting the extra energy out productively.
Yes. It just kind of lets my mind, and I tell you, I do some of my best thinking when I'm knitting, because my hands are busy and then my mind is free. Yeah. And I have had dreams like you wouldn't believe this last couple of weeks. It's crazy, and for me, when I was living in Canada, I just didn't dream. I think I was so stressed out. It was like, I just shut off, but here I just have the most vivid dreams. It's wild, but yeah, pleasure is a really important part of life, but true pleasure, where you really, it's no guilt. You're spending time doing something or doing nothing, like la dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing. Well, what does nothing mean? For me, it's sitting and knitting and maybe listening to an audiobook or going for a walk with my husband, or, I went just the other day, I went wildcrafting. I have a video of it on my TikTok. And I just went and looked for some herbs and walked across. There's this old ancient bridge not too far from my house. And I just stood out there and just soaked it in and felt so good. And I wasn't really doing anything specifically, but yet for me, it was absolute pleasure and just relaxation and, fed my soul. Those kinds of things are so important for leveling up spiritually, boy. You need those.
There's that connection. There's that connection with the pleasure, the surrender. Yes. When you surrender, then you can experience the pleasure.
Exactly. And not truly experience it without it.
Yeah.
You truly can. Guilt, throw that sucker out. Guilt is so bad for that.
And
it's
right. Surrendering to the what isness of another person's reaction. Yeah. There's so much peace in that. Like, okay, do you? We don't have to see eye to eye because we'll never really, we're all perceptions. We're all walking around with our own people.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it has to start from that place of learning to love yourself. When you go from being the mother into being the crone, there's that period where you learn who you really are and you learn to accept yourself. If you go through that transition in a healthy way and you level up, you're going to come to this place of understanding that this is who I am. I have a lot to give because of who I am. Not because I'm being who everybody wants me to be or meeting this need or meeting that need, just because I am me. And that's enough.
It's beautiful.
That's a really huge leveling up right there.
That's perfect. Guys, I think this is I want to end on that note. That was just like beautiful. That was beautiful. You can find Brenda. All of the handles are Mugwort and Meadow. Gosh, we said it in the beginning, but Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, the website, Substack, and then there's Great Rights. You're on Medium as well.
Yep.
Y'all, get in touch with this woman and take advantage of the consultation. Y'all know this is the second time we've had Brenda on because she's amazing. That's a wrap. Remember, when everything's going wrong, it just means you're crafting a great story. Stay tuned for more episodes where we turn life's lemons into laughable tales. And don't forget to like and subscribe and keep finding the best in the worst because life's too ridiculous not to laugh at it.